Okay, let's just get started. I'm going to post a link to invite people to join the conversation on X. I think the only post on X that I made was the one for the Patreon, which forces you to charge like $4 or something. So I'm going to post a new link that will allow anybody who's watching to come and join free. So that is up right now. Just posted it on the X account. Um, Take that off. So we're going to start this course, and I'm excited because I wrote this class for a different community of people. There's a couple thousand people online in a written forum somewhere. Hopefully you can hear me. If somebody wants to come in or make a comment or something to let me know that the audio is working, that'd be great. But there's a community out there where I've been posting lectures on Nietzsche's Zarathustra, whole walls of text. I was posting them every day. And they once said, some students said it would be useful if we had some context for Nietzsche in the ongoing story of philosophy. And as a result, I produced this course called A Brief History of the Totality of Western Thought. And that's going to make up the year 2 backbone course of our core curriculum. So if we want to talk for a moment about the classes and the curriculum and what's going to be offered, we can do that. So a few points. One, there are 3 other professors coming. We have someone who's going to be presenting soon a class on how to appreciate science fiction literature. We have an author of romance novels who's going to come in and talk about romance novels as literature, not pulp, not erotica, but how to appreciate romance literature. And we have Dr. Tartaglia coming with an alternative to the Nietzsche third-year course on Quine and thinkers that come before and after Quine, including a Gödel class that he's almost finished putting together now, where you might even be able to learn how to derive Gödel's incompleteness theorems. So if you don't like the Platonic, existentialist, phenomenological, or Nietzschean path of the third-year material that I'm offering, you might like the Quinean approach. And so that's going to be on offer, as well as the Gödel class. And then he and I are also putting together a class on natural law theory and philosophy of law and interpretation methods for the Constitution that are argued by legal scholars and landmark cases. And it's a whole bunch of stuff thrown together. It's going to be really fun. We'll co-teach that one soon. But let's talk about the core curriculum here. So the core curriculum looks like this. And, I should say present. I should just say share screen. Let's share this. So the core curriculum looks like this. Now we have larger stuff. There's literature. There's other subjects that are going to be taught in this online university at some point. But what I've created, look, I'll just tell you, what I created was a map of all this. Oh, you know what? Before we get started, simultaneous sip time. Get your cup, your mug, your glass, your tankard, your chalice, your thermos, your stein, your canteen jug or flask, your vessel of any kind, and fill it with your favorite liquid. I have some Dr. Pepper here. And join me now for the unparalleled pleasure, the dopamine hit of the day, the thing that makes literally everything better. It's called the simultaneous sip, and it happens right now. Go. That's good stuff. Okay, so this is going to be exciting. Let's talk about the university. When I started building this, I may as well show you some website. I suppose it's not really ready to go live. Here, show this website. Get an idea of what's on offer and what's coming up, and what we want is some Patreon subscribers because that would be useful. But let's just show what we've got to offer first. And I think this would be the correct link. So this is a new attempt at a university. You could think of it as a homeschool attempt at university. You could think of it as an online attempt at university. About 8 years ago, I said to 3 different universities, you're not going to be here in 5 years. And these were institutions that were older than 100 years old, and they're all bankrupt, and they're going out of business, and they're shutting their philosophy departments and their geology departments. They're just closing everything down. And I said it was obvious why that was. You've destroyed the reason why the building was built in the first place, And so nothing's going to be able to stave off the destruction. You may think you're clever, but you're not. But that doesn't mean that that true academia has died. It's just no longer within those walls. We can talk more about the history of what's going on with the universities, but we're trying to do something different. So where's my link here? This website. One of the things we did is we made a map of all the subjects by which human beings have invented to achieve transcendence. I mean it. It's a map. It actually relates all of those subjects together. It includes javelin throwing and discus throwing as two different parts of the map, all within natural experientialism of sports. And it has psychedelic immediatism and people who use drugs to try to have transcendence. We don't promote that here, but it's on the map. And carpentry and plumbing and arc welding. And it includes bioinformatics and molecular chemistry and ontology and epistemology and different branches of philosophy and Catholic theology and Catholic mysticism. And all of these ideas have a different area of the map. And the map is binary and the map is fractal, which means that if we go to the subject map here, let's go to the website itself, subject map, say share this link instead, and to stage. Okay. So we have the humanities, which splits into the mythos and the logos. And then the mythos is its own yin-yang symbol that splits, and the logos splits into philologos and psiologos, or philosophy and science. And the science splits into natural sciences and human sciences. And then the natural sciences split into foundational and environmental, and the foundational splits into chemistry and physics, and the environmental splits into biology and geology. And you get the idea. It just keeps going and going and going until you can get as fine as you want or as broad as you want. The mythos splits into mysticism and the arts. The arts can split into crafts and the decorative arts. And you eventually get down to pretty much every subject. Now, why am I showing you all this? So there's the temporal spatial arts, which split into music and architecture. That tells you where you are in the world and where you are temporally in the world. So you've got different types of architecture, different types of music, and different types of acting techniques. We just keep going finer and finer. So right now, the map is also includes different types of literature, different subgenres of science fiction, different subgenres of romance literature, because we've got professors coming on those subjects. So that's a pretty cool map. Why do I bring up the map? Well, I bring up the map because every student who decides to join this university has to go through the core curriculum. And the core curriculum is what we're going to talk about here. It's a 3-year course, and each year is done very differently. You get about 85% of an undergraduate degree in philosophy by the time you're done with year 1. And then years 2 and 3 are more like master's and PhD levels in a sense, and the classes are done very differently. But the core curriculum is for everybody. However, Leibniz was described as the last European man to know everything, but now we hyper specialize. So after Leibniz, you couldn't be an expert in mathematics and theology and every possible subject and write the next book on every one of those subjects, but you could if you were Leibniz, and you could before then. But what do we do now? Well, now what we do is we say, I'm a hyper specialist in intermolecular forces of tertiary folding attraction in macro organic molecules. But don't ask me about inorganic molecules, and don't ask me about fourth level quaternary folding, because I'm not the foremost expert in those things. So we hyper specialize. And the problem with that is, as I said to Dr. Tartaglia a few years ago, I said, look, if we were to get all the chemists in the world together into a big tent, and we were to tell them, you guys sit and discuss and debate and talk about the world until you come up with a list of all the things that humanity should do that would be the most effective to move the world into a better place, when they come out of that tent and they give us that list, we should tear it up. Because none of them know how to think like an economist. Whatever advice they give us, it's going to be wrong. So how do we live in this post-Leibnizian world where we have to specialize? We have to be a theologian or an optics specialist or further and further levels of hyper-specialization. And my answer to it is one of the pillars of the university, which is called Dionysian interdisciplinarianism. But who cares about the fancy terminology? The point is to be interdisciplinary. And the point is to be interdisciplinary in a specific way. And the specific way that we want to be interdisciplinary is in the sense of having very different ways of thinking. So the map allows us to say, okay, each student is going to do the core curriculum, but what they're also going to do is pick 3 areas of interest: a primary, a secondary, and a tertiary area of interest. And whatever their primary area of interest is, if it's on the logos side or the mythos side, their secondary area has to be from the opposite side. And whichever subdivision after that, one of those other 2 is, their tertiary area of interest has to be on the opposite side of that. So you have to have what we're looking for is to develop students who see education as a lifelong endeavor. They see teaching and learning as 2 sides of the same coin. So if you're very passionate and you want to learn about something and you're being coached by a professor and you've developed some stuff to say, come in and teach. So this is a place where you can also become, one of the teachers of the project. But let's say you want to be a chemist. Well, then you better care about magic realist literature and economics. Right? You've got to pick areas that are from different parts of the map, is the idea. If you want to be a biological evolutionary psychologist, and you go down further layers there, fine. But your other side of the map has to be something in the mythos. So you can be a carpenter who also is a Darwinian evolutionary biologist who also understands how to speak meaningfully about ontology or epistemology or medieval philosophy. Now, that brings up the fact that there are different layers of zooming in and zooming out of this map. So you might say carpentry is one of my areas of interest. You could say carpentry in general, in which case your coach is going to put together, okay, there's framing, there's furniture making, there's little boxes and toys and things like that, there's little artifact making, there's totem pole carving, there's all sorts of different type of carpentry and working with wood, and you kind of have to have a flavor of all of them. But you might say, no, 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 that's not what I'm interested in. I want to zoom down all the way to a specific tradition of furniture making that's only found in one town in Italy. And that tradition is good. Fine. You got to go live there for a couple of years and apprentice, right? If that's what you want your carpentry to be, that type of thing. So there's different layers here. You can say, in general, I want to have something to say about medieval philosophy and I want to make that one of my subjects. Or you can say, I want to become an expert in scholastic Aristotelianism or Aquinian theology or something like that. So you can zoom in and you can zoom out on these, but you have to pick a primary, secondary, and tertiary area of interest. And then we're going to have somebody who's a peer-reviewed, published, tenured professor to coach you and say, okay, let's put together your entire university experience. Right now, what we're doing is we're recording the videos for the core curriculum. And so on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we are doing all of the first year material. Tomorrow at this time, we're going to do the year 1 backbone course, which we started last year. So we're halfway through it. And we're doing religion and philosophy of mind. We're going to continue both of those from where we left off. And we're also now starting epistemology. Today we started metaphysics and we started ethics yesterday. So that's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, counter or irrespectively. So those are courses that are done in a first year style. Let's talk about the first year style. The first year style is an introduction to the topics and the fields and the battlefields and the different camps that position themselves on the battlefields. So for instance, if you go and look at the videos for the year 1 material that we've done already, well, actually, we can show a little bit of that. We can say, share this tab again. Let's go to, not philosophers, let's go to classes. Seems frozen, like it doesn't wish to work, which is a problem. Let's just say wait. All right, I'll talk about it. In the year one backbone course, it's just backbone course for all of these, and we actually have an alternative for the year three that's done by Dr. Tartaglia, and we're looking for an alternative on postmodernism. So we're looking for a professor to do that. But the year one backbone course is done with 8 sections of live philosophical debates. We're using this Modern Introduction to Philosophy third edition book. We're reading all of the readings from that book. All of the readings are little excerpts and essays from around the battlefield. And we're going through it in the recording and we're having a debate, we're having a conversation. That's the way we're doing it. The 8 fields oh, you know what? I could demonstrate it this way. Why don't I build this up? Let's say, that. Okay, cool. So that'll expand this out a bit here. So the 8 fields that we're doing in the first year backbone course are determinism, freedom, and moral responsibility. We finished all those videos. You can watch them on YouTube. And we read little essays. Here's what a determinist, a hard determinist says. Here's what another one says from a statistical perspective. Here's what William James has to say from his really interesting pragmatic perspective. And here's what a libertarian might say. And here's what a compatibilist would say. Here's a different kind of compatibilist. Here's a pseudo-problemist. And we just basically get little essays from around the battlefield and take a brief survey of it. And we did the same thing with the mind-body problem and death. We did the same thing with moral judgments. It's basically like an intro to ethics course. We did the same thing with the existence of God, and all those videos are available. We were nearing the end of the a priori section, and we'll be continuing this tomorrow at this time. We'll continue the a priori section and wrap up the rest of them. But in addition to those classes, we have 5 to start out with, 5 complementary courses that go with it, and they're done in the same style. We're using anthologies typically. We're looking at little essays and just getting a feel for the different contributors and the different camps and the different voices that debate these ideas and saying, okay, you're being introduced to the philosophical conversation. We're going to learn how to read philosophical essays. So we started Philosophy of Mind, and we're continuing that now on Fridays. We started Philosophy of Religion. We're continuing that on Mondays. We just started Metaphysics today, and we wrapped that up. That video's out there now. We just started Epistemology, I think, on Monday. And we started Ethics yesterday at 5 p.m. So all of our classes are at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And all those courses are being offered this week. In addition to that, we're doing the year 2 stuff. So today we're going to start the first class of the year 2 backbone course. It's very different. So now that we've done our undergraduate approach and introduction and taste of a bunch of different essays, put that aside. Year 2. This is this course. We have a narrative. We have a conversation. We have a cyclic poetry in philosophy. We are going to start 250,000 years ago with cave paintings. We're actually going to start before that with embodied animalistic patterns of ways of being and ideas that are free-floating rationales, but not necessarily conscious, even in the minds of the animals that are enacting them, but maybe in the dreams of the animals that are enacting them. And then from that dream world, we're going to see emerge the art, which is an impressionistic language that says, here is what being is like. These are the forms that we've come to discover exist and shape our being. Now, you might say to yourself as a materialist, what are you talking about? I know how I came to take my present form, and I know how all nature came to take its present form. It was natural selection, acting to select advantageous variety from random variety of materialistic creatures, and here we are, ta-da. But then you might say to yourself, what if I was a radical Darwinian? What if I really believed that? What if I really believed that what I am is the product of nature killing off anything that doesn't fit in well enough with it, and what it produced was personality and a dreaming creature? Whoa. Maybe the ancient mythopoets weren't so wrong to say nature should be conceptualized as Venus and Apollo and Daphne and Mars. Maybe the language of narrative and character, which is the correct language for the characterological, is the deepest and oldest language for telling us who we are and what world it is that we inhabit. And maybe the divine is also a part of what's been shaping us. And maybe that's a personality that our ancestors were paying attention to and trying to understand. And maybe so we're going to start there. before we get to propositional arguments, before philosophy proper really starts. We're going to do this pre-philosophy thing. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today, which is why I started with a bunch of pictures of cave art. So we'll have some things to say about that, and I'll get into that class a little bit more now and say how do we approach the stories and how do we approach them to understand that maybe this is a deep grounding in which is nestled the philosophical conversation. Once we've got our ideas dreamt of well enough, we can start to make propositional clarity and then have syllogistic arguments and start the whole philosophical project off with Thales. Then we'll start with Thales. So this is a pre-Socratic philosophy course, and we'll go from Thales to Socrates. But what we're going to see emerge is a conversation between tendencies, fictilian psychological camps, languages of preference that are subjective or objective. And then when we're done with that narrative, we're going to see that the entire thing repeats again. The entire thing repeats. So this course is also a Socratic ancient philosophy course and also a medieval philosophy course. And we're going to go through all of this, and we're going to read little bits of everybody. And the complementary courses, which go along with this, by the way, are deeper dives. We call them symposiums of a lot of these different authors. So we're going to read little bits and try to understand Aristotle a little bit, and understand Plato a little bit, and understand Anaximander a little bit, and understand Heraclitus a little bit. We're going to try to understand Aquinas a little bit, but the complementary courses are, why don't we just read entire works by these people together and have group discussions? So we are going to be imagining with the pre-Socratics. We're going to be dialoguing with Plato, reading every single thing Plato wrote that we have. We're going to be doing a course on the incoherencies, where we read Omar Khayyam, but we also read Ghazali and Ibn Rushd. We're going to be theologizing with Aquinas, where we'll read the entire Summa Theologica. And we're going to be meditating with Descartes, which is a thin little philosophical text by a mostly scientist who did a pretty revolutionary thing and is a major feature in the ongoing repeating cyclical poetry that will emerge about the philosophical conversation from this metaphilosophical analysis and the lenses that we offer in this year 2 backbone course for interpreting philosophy. And we're going to do the thing that I hate the most, but is probably really important, which is go through the Prolegomena by Kant. So those are the complementary courses. They're very different, right? Very different from the little bits of excerpts and little bits of debates. And I'm not really telling you what I think about it, but we're just learning what the battlefield is like and the ground is like for philosophy of mind and religion and all those things that we do in year 1, which is very much an undergraduate level. This is more like a, hey, let's get pretty serious and have some really good discussions. So if you're enjoying this content, you should subscribe to the Patreon. We need $20 a month from everybody, and we need at least like 150 students to really get this thing to expand. I'm going to put as much effort as I've been putting into it, but we really have bills to pay, and we need to do that. But also, if you're subscribed and if you're a part of the community and whatever sorts of communal ways we have to discuss with each other, you might want to get in here. You might want to be in the videos. We just finished a video with 5 or 6 people, and we were having conversations. We'd like you to get in here. If you want to meditate with Descartes, which, by the way, it is a meditative, mystical text. It is designed to really rewire your brain in real time and bring you to a direct encounter with the divine. And we read it that way. And we read Plato. Well, we'll talk more about how we read things as both mythopoetic narrative and philosophy, and who the 6 consummate thinkers are who required dipping back into that mythopoetic language of art in order to give us truths that were grander than merely propositional truths. And I shouldn't use a phrase like merely propositional if I want to be a philosopher, but the truth is there is a deeper language out there. Okay, so we go through Socrates. We spend as much time on Socrates as we do on all the pre-Socratics, and then we spend just as much time on Plato, and then just as much time on Aristotle, and then in addition to that, we have a complementary course where we read all of Plato's dialogues. And we were doing that before we took a break. We're back. We're going to start doing that again. I think, what day is that? Actually, let me pull up the schedule here. This is the new schedule for classes as we have them until we get 150 people to sign up. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we'll be continuing our dialoguing with Plato. There's a bunch of videos out there of us reading different dialogues of his already. So back to this course. We spend just as much time on Aristotle. Then we spend quite a lot of time on some medieval philosophers. They're not all written out here, but let's say about 20 Neoplatonists and 20 Aristotelian scholastics. We can't do everybody, but we look at a lot. And then we're going to do, we're going to see that the entire thing repeats itself again. We have got, Spinoza and Leibniz and Mellenbrol, and we have Berkeley and Hume and Locke, and we're going to look at the rationalists and the empiricists, and we're going to see them both trying to wrestle with what Descartes did, just like the Platonic and Aristotelian attempted to wrestle with what Socrates was accomplishing, and how the conversation diverges and diverges and diverges until you have to get a new consummate thinker. And understanding how that cycle seems to be working in philosophy will allow us to see where we are in that cycle and what we can expect the newer trends to be in philosophy. And as Nietzsche said, the point of a philosopher is to try to become timeless. And so we're talking in this meta-philosophical way in some ways, but also using philosophy to sort of try to get to the eye which floats above the pyramid. We got to do the nitty-gritty arguing and learning how the pyramid structure works, but there's a goal beyond that perhaps. And we're going to do a 19th century philosophy course in this backbone course. That's the course we're doing right now. We're starting with cave painting. We're starting even before then, and we're going to move all the way up through all of this in this backbone course. And we're going to do it in a narrative, storytelling, dialectic kind of a way where we see the poetry repeating, and we have a bunch of lenses for how to approach philosophy that they're just mine. You can throw them out if you don't like them, but they're sort of things that I've developed in my studies of philosophy. Then we get to the 19th century philosophy course. We're going to do Kant and Fichte and Hegel and Marx and Engels and Schopenhauer and Wittgenstein and Kierkegaard and Nietzsche. Holy mackerel, that's a lot. Then the third year course is more like PhD level stuff, I think. We've already done the Backbone Decoding Zarathustra course at least twice, but we haven't recorded it yet. Nietzsche said that Zarathustra was a book that wouldn't really be understood for about 200 years, and we're nearing that 200-year mark. And one of the ways of thinking about this university is the first attempt or the next attempt to try to do that. And he said whole departments will have to be set up for the interpretation of that book, and you can think of this as an attempt to do that. So I think we have a more expanded version of all of this here. Okay, so this is, whoa, what happened? Okay. So you can go and see that these videos have already been done on determinism and free will, all that stuff in the first year style, and we're going to keep continuing that. In this pre-philosophy section, which we're going to do first, we're going to look at interpretive lenses for philosophy. So I'll get back to year 3 in a moment. So in the class we're doing now, we're going to start with the pre-philosophy. So we're going to talk about some interpretive lenses. Philosophical progress as exponential growth in questionability. That's one way of looking at it. You can put that on and discard it at will, but it's a way of thinking about philosophy from a metaphilosophical perspective. We have philosophy among the rest of the humanities and its relationship to the others. And like the twin sister relationship it has with theology and the governance it has over science. And it's my perspective. You can throw it out and you can quarrel with it. Philosophers, we quarrel with everything. And so that's all welcome. And if you want to be in this video here, I think I posted the link to join this video live, but if I haven't, yeah, it looks like I have. So you can go to the X account and you can join right now and argue with stuff that I'm saying as I'm simply introducing what I'm going to talk about. Interpretive lenses, the history of philosophy as philosophy and vice versa. We're going to do some other interpretive lenses, cosmic patterns, free-floating behaviorally encoded principles, subconscious encoding and dreams, images of art as a language for talking about that dream realm of impression, painting and song, architecture and sculpture, drama and the celebratory. So we're going to talk about building architecture so that it speaks to you about your place in the cosmos or your place in the body politic. We're going to talk about the statue of David, the statue of Cupid triumphant, the statue of Venus with that powerful femininity that she has. We're going to look at helping you to meet a character, to meet a personality that the ancient good dreamers were dreaming, the prophets were dreaming as a personal pattern way of being in the world, as one of the parts of nature which is doing the selecting to help you to evolve, which is also writing itself into your subconscious so that it registers in your dreams and that it speaks to you when you go to the museum to see it. Okay, we're going to talk about drama and celebration, having your entire calendar orient everything you do and think of as who you are around these stories. Okay, we're going to talk about the mythopoetic and how that language works, and we're going to use that to set the background to introduce Thales. Once we're done with all of that, we're going to do the rest of what we said. We're going to do Thales. We're going to do Anaximander and Anaximenes. So we're kind of the Plato and Aristotle of Thales. We're going to look at the two Platonic and Aristotelian trends as they diverge further and further apart into an incompatibility and even an incoherence, perhaps. We're going to look at, but we're not going to judge any of these philosophers as wrong, right? We could say, hey, I'm a neo-Xenophonian, and I think Xenophanes basically got everything right. We're not preaching that that's not true, right? You can think Xenophanes basically got everything right. When I say that he's in a poetic story that repeats and rhymes and cycles, that doesn't mean that we're saying, well, only the consummate thinkers were really right. We're saying, no, they're trying to get at something, and they're doing it by trying to unite these two incompatible languages, and maybe they can briefly do it, like an orgasm. You can't live in consummation, but you can achieve it if you get enough friction between the two different ways of thinking. And so they get more and more masculine and feminine. They get more and more frictional. We get to Parmenides and Zeno, and we're going to look at Anaxagoras and Empedocles and the atomists and the sophists, and we're going to see, some really wild ideas that get way out there. Like, okay, I've looked at the ideas, and they're what matter to me. That very Platonic way of doing it. And the ideas prove to me that change is an illusion and nothing is real. And that's the Parmenidean Platonic way of approaching with or wrestling with what Thales was doing. But on the other side, we're going to get the postmoderns of the pre-Socratics, the sophists, who say there is no truth. It's all a power game. I can teach you to make the worse the better argument, and we can win court cases, and we can bully people around with our word games and that type of thing. And then it's in that milieu of greatest tension where Socrates emerges and reunites a life of action with a life of thinking and drinks the hemlock. And if he doesn't drink the hemlock, every word he ever said means the opposite of what he meant it to mean originally, and he understands that and says that. And so anyway, we're going to look at Socrates, and all right, we don't have to go into everything we're going to do, but this, you can pause the video and see everything that we're going to be looking at carefully, and all of the complementary courses in year 2 that go along with it. Then we can say, let's get back to Zarathustra. So year 3, and we're going to start this on Friday again, we are going through every single chapter of Nietzsche's Zarathustra, and we are decoding it, and we are wrestling with it, and we're coming to understand it as mythopoetry and philosophy at the same time, just like the Meditations of Descartes, just like Plato's Dialogues. And then the complementary courses which go along with that are the children or twins of Nietzsche. So the sister of Nietzsche, the twin of Nietzsche, we're going to tremble with Kierkegaard. And we're going to actually do something even more than the symposiums of the complementary courses of the previous year. And we're going to do what I call a deep dive, which means we're going to read everything we have on these people. Holy mackerel. Yes, we are. It's going to be fun. You don't have to be around for all of it. You can pick what you want to be a part of. We're going to do a complimentary course on the pragmatic common sense of James and Reed, and we're going to do the same thing. Look at everything they wrote. We're going to dream with Jung, and we're going to look at, I swear to God, everything that they wrote. We're going to wrestle with Jordan Peterson, which is a course we already started, and we continued it yesterday with class 14, where we're going to go through all the videos of Jordan Peterson and his books. And we're doing the psychological significance of the biblical series class right now. We did it yesterday. There's a new video out. And we're going to try to extract his way of thinking and interpret his way of thinking. And we're going to do a complementary deep dive course on Plantinga and Bonjour. So this is what we have so far. If you don't like this existential pragmatism and all of that stuff from Nietzsche, there's an alternative third-year curriculum that Dr. Tartaglia is building right now, where he is going to give you classes on Frege and Gödel and Putnam and Wittgenstein and Peirce and Popper, all in the context of Quine, who he basically sees as the last real philosophical project until the postmodernists came in and destroyed everything. In addition to that, we're still looking for a philosopher who will come in and give us a postmodern course on Derrida and Foucault and Eco and Zizek, who's a lot of fun. So maybe that will be on offer as opposed to this existential Platonic way of thinking or this Aristotelian scientism way of thinking. But that's what we've got available for now, because we still have to do other things to pay bills. We're just going to be doing these 10 courses. And today we're in the year 2 backbone course, A Brief History of the Totality of Western Thought, which was created out of a totally different community that I haven't introduced to any of this university yet, where I was doing just written versions of the Nietzsche lectures. And then they said, well, what if we had a context from philosophy, and just sort of took off from there. So that's enough discussing that for now. This is the university that we're building. I have applications from other professors to come in and offer stuff. We would really like to get this thing going, and I've put a lot of effort into it. I'm going to put a lot more effort into it. But what we need more than anything are people who want to come and hang out and spend their evenings, whatever evenings you want to spend. Spend every evening with us. Once a week, come and hang out. Spend your evening meditating on, wrestling with, thinking about, reading and studying. First, the greatest mythopoetic works. Last year we did a course on, we did some reading of Ovid's Metamorphoses, and I want to do more of that. We're doing the Jordan Peterson biblical lectures. We've read some ancient Egyptian prophecy. There's a whole bunch of stuff beyond the core curriculum of philosophy that we're doing. But those are the texts, those are the stories, those are the mythologies. And we want to do a real mythology curriculum that's as powerful as this philosophy one. But those are the stories which, as I say, took poop-throwing, rock-wielding apes and turned them into cathedral builders and pyramid builders. And if you have the instinct or the prophetic sense that our culture is in a bit of a crisis mode right now, maybe it would be worthwhile to go and meditate on those things and spend some time trying to extract some gold from them. In addition to that, we have philosophy in the core curriculum of philosophy, where we can take the greatest contributors to the greatest conversations that our species has ever yet invented, and we can read them, and we can spend some time thinking the way they think and trying to understand how they think and engaging with what they think and saying, oh, that Hume guy, I feel like this. Oh, but this guy, wow, that's pretty great. And learn what the arguments are. And oh, look at how much I've been taking for granted. And oh, it turns out I'm a child of all these philosophers because I use phrases like the greatest good for the greatest number, or the lesser of two evils, and all of these ideas are invented by different philosophers. And it's now I can actually know what it is that makes me up, and maybe I can no longer be an NPC. I can actually be engaged. I can struggle up this pyramid until I'm able to touch and look at the thing which floats above it. So maybe next time we'll start with getting into more of the content of class 2, but we could get into it a bit more now if we felt like it. So why don't we look at some notes we have here. I tell you what, I think nobody has joined to debate any of this, so maybe this was a good way of introducing a lot more of what this university is going to be about, and maybe we could end it there. And we'll start with disembodied rationales, free-floating rationales of embodied principles in animals. That's where we're going to start this year 2 backbone course. We're going to restart all of philosophy again in year 2 with this narrative, conversational poetry, metaphilosophical way of, and with unique lenses for understanding it as a conversation and as a thing which exists in the world. So it should mirror the source of all things that exist, just like everything else does. And we're going to see it that way. But then, so we do philosophy in an undergraduate, and sort of picking little things year 1. Then we do this in year 2. And then we get to start all over again with Nietzsche's hammer and go smashing to pieces all of these philosophical ideas through Nietzsche's lens in year 3. So we basically get 3 attempts to approach all of philosophy, and that's what makes up our core curriculum. So since nobody is actually in this video, I would say this class at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Wednesdays is a class that anybody really interested in philosophy as a conversation and learning how to engage in that conversation, have opportunities to engage in that conversation, and understanding it from sort of a 1 foot in psychology, 1 foot in mythopoetry, 1 foot in philosophy, meta-philosophical perspective. You need to get in here. You need to send me a DM on X. You need to subscribe to the Patreon. You need to do something which allows you to actually be in these videos because we are going to talk about a heck of a lot of really cool things. And I think it's going to be exciting. I've never released any of this content before. Everything I've done is either year one stuff or year three stuff, which is what do all philosophers think except me, and what does Nietzsche think? But this is an example of a person who embodies wrestling with philosophy. And you can say, I want to be a philosopher. I don't like what this Stephen guy is saying over here. I don't like what this Phil guy over here is saying. I don't like what Zara is saying that much. But I still want to engage with people who are really reading it all and have something to say and can contribute to the conversation. So come on in and be a part of this class. This is going to be the one. This is going to be really, really exciting. I'm excited by the rest of it too. But we're building a lot, and we need some subscribers. We really just flat out need that, because life costs money to live, and $20 a month is not a lot to pay for all this content. If we got 150 subscribers, if we had 300 subscribers, we would be doing 10 times the classes. We wouldn't just be doing 2 a day, 5 days a week. We would go back to a bigger schedule and an even bigger one than we had before. So keep that in mind and consider subscribing. Send some DMs to Zara on X so that you can maybe make a group chat and you can get free links to join and be a part of the video. Subscribe to the Patreon. You'll get links that way. And we're going to figure out all this technology, and we're going to figure out how to build all of this soon. But I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited to talk about some of those lenses, to talk about how to approach ancient art and to understand it as maybe a profound source of truth or meaning, or at least orientation in the world, and a different kind of truth. I'm really excited about all of this, and that's where we'll pick up next time, uh, 1 week from today. Peace.